This videotape is of John Grinder teaching the final 4 days of a 24-day NLP practitioner certification training in Boulder, Colorado, June 1985. In the previous 20 days of this training, participants have already learned all the basic practitioner-level NLP patterns and skills. John's job in this final 4 days is to help participants fully integrate these patterns and skills into their ongoing behavior. As John does this, at times he uses words and concepts which are richly meaningful to those who've been through this training, but may not be quite so meaningful to those without the background. For this reason, we're primarily recommending the videotape for those with some familiarity with NLP.
NLP is the study of human excellence. It comes out of a discrepancy in my personal experience of being taught by my mother. So if you've got any complaints, you know who to direct your complaints to. Being taught by my mother that when I went to school, what I was going to get access to by going to school, this is the only way she could get me out the front door, was people who would teach me about people of excellence who had preceded me in my culture. That is, the educational system was the institution that was to serve as the transfer agent between people of excellence, people who were doing extraordinary things or had done extraordinary things in my culture, language, and people like myself who were children growing up who wanted to have access to these the adventures of people who had gone before me, people who were extraordinary in some way. And I don't know what your experience was, but I know what mine was. So one way to think about this whole endeavor is it's my answer to that discrepancy. I was disappointed. There were some really fine exceptions to the disappointment that I experienced in the educational systems in this country, as well as some I've attended in other countries. But in general, it seemed to me that they were teaching mediocrity, and that people were using a statistical approach. So rather than take someone of excellence who was extraordinary in some way and study the patterns, the adventures of this person, they took somebody who was extraordinarily extroverted and operated in the world. They took somebody who was extraordinarily introverted, operated mentally with precision and excellence with their internal representations, and they did a statistical analysis and came up with the middle. The middle, of course, is exactly what I'm not interested in, and I hope you're not either. The whole purpose of this technology is to arm you, not to make you better therapists, not to make you better business people, not to make you better human beings in any sense. That's not my goal. That's never been my goal. I don't really care much about that. What I am interested in is promoting human excellence. And the purpose of technology is to prepare you to go out and create your own models of excellence. If that doesn't happen, the program has failed, as far as I'm concerned. You may be happy. You may find yourself with better bottom lines in terms of your business. You may find yourself a lot more creative, a lot more powerful, able to do things with a single bound in your professional life, improve your relationships in your family, etc. That's all lovely, and I compliment you. I applaud. That's important. That's the fabric of your life. But that's your life. I have a different mission. As far as I'm concerned, my mission is to prepare you as best I can to take the technology, especially after you've had some months of integration where you're running these patterns and noticing responses and making adjustments and doing things backwards and inside out to find out what the limits of what you've been taught are. At some point you'll go, I've done this before. I don't want to do it again. I want to do something else. And as you begin to look around the world to figure out what else that might be, it would be an interesting challenge to you, that you might consider what I'm offering here as a way of guidance this morning. I hope you are seized and obsessed at some point in your future with human excellence. It comes in lots of forms. It has different colors and shapes and sounds attached to it. It even smells different. But there is no scarcity of the issue of human excellence. In your daily lives, you have contact with people who may not be the well-rounded, lovely person you would like them to be, but there are parts of them that are absolutely superb. The way they handle this situation, the way they deal with that one, how they think up a response here, how they execute it. Lots of possibilities in your everyday life, if you sensitize yourself to it. The real disaster as far as the educational systems in our country go, and again, there are lovely exceptions, you should be so lucky, is the idea that they set up self-fulfilling prophecies, set up perceptual biases to teach you to scan for the mid-range in any human activity. And I'd like you to drop that. That's nonsense. It's certainly not going to be, my particular objectives are not going to be met. And I'm going to make you partially responsible for meeting my objectives here. You can accept that challenge or not, obviously. So my proposal is that whatever you do with this material over the next few months, there's going to come a point down the line where you've demonstrated to your own satisfaction that you've been successful in applying this material to yourself as well as other people. I should comment on that. If you can't access, anchor, and maintain your own state when operating in a personal or professional context, you have absolutely no right to be messing with anybody else's states. In its applied form, NLP is, in a sense, the syntax of states. That is to say, what state will you decide to occupy in this relationship? What set of states? How are you going to shift state? What security are you going to use to shift state? What class of states will the states that you're occupying and presenting to the world do in terms of accessing and maintaining states in other people? It's all relational. There is no single resource state that will serve you well in the class of context you have to occupy in a daily run through your life. If you don't know that you're multiple personality, figure that out real quick. The only difference between you as multiple personality people who are locked up is that you have metasystems or are developing them. And by metasystem, all I'm referring to is the fact that a multiple personality in a pathological sense, I think it's an evolutionary stage, by the way. I think the species is going through some remarkable changes. It has been for centuries, but it's really crystallizing in the century we happen to be in. R.D. Laing's famous for claiming schizophrenia is a natural response to a fragmented technological society. And if you've had any good fortune to be able to live with a tribal society, as I've had the good fortune several times, you'll know what R.D. Laing's talking about. There are mechanisms, there are relationships, extended family groups, hunting groups, tribal groups, where everything that you need in your development as a human being within the metaphor of that culture is available to you. So when Bill was a little kid, it was not his father or mother that disciplined him in the tribe. It was his uncle, maternal uncle. And that's a function that's been in that tribe for centuries and centuries. Who were his teachers? Well, they were not consolidated in an institution somewhere where they taught mediocrity. They were the people in the tribe who were available at that moment in his development who could offer him the skills and behaviors that he needed as a model. In a coherent culture, such as the ones you can find still in certain parts of the world, tribal in nature, fourth world, so-called fourth world countries, you're going to find all of those needs are available. There are functions available within the extended group, but not here. And so what happens here, we have to be a lot of the functions that are usually distributed in an extended network. So we become schizophrenic. But schizophrenia is not an adequate response. It's only two models. We need a lot more than just two models to operate. So we become multiple personalities. And as I started to say, there's only a couple of differences between me as a multiple personality and someone who's locked up for the pathology called multiple personality. And that is, a multiple personality in a pathological sense is someone who's under external stimulus control. An odor comes up, a voice quality occurs, a certain pattern of behavior operates in the environment. And suddenly that person, without any voluntary choice being involved, shifts to a different persona. And they're amnesic for what they were doing a moment ago, typically. And those are the only two differences. The locus of control, as far as which persona I offer to the world, is under my control. I have the choices. I can choose whichever one I believe to be appropriate for the context I'm operating in. So I maintain the choice within myself of which of those faces I will offer to the world. And the second thing is, while I'm known altogether too widely for being amnesic for lots of parts of my life. It's not a requirement. I can, if I choose, remember my experiences, whether I'm talking about travel experiences I had in East Africa, or what I ate for breakfast, the river rafting trip I went on the Arkansas River yesterday. The guy I was yesterday in the front of the boat and the guy I am today are really different. But I do have the ability to recall that experience and pull parts of it into this persona and use it. But those are the only two differences. Claiming multiple personality is simply an evolutionary stage. Some people get caught because of cultural values in the necessity of being consistent. What are you if you're consistent? Well, boring. Unless we play semantic games and go consistently flexible or consistently creative or something. But in general, consistency does imply that kind of experience. You also lose your status as a hunter if you become consistent. What's the difference between someone who's hunted and someone who's a hunter? Direction? Perhaps. Outcome? Perhaps. I think those are both legitimate responses. I'm searching for some other characteristic that distinguishes a hunter from a hunted one. Predictability. To be an effective hunter, you have to be able at any moment in time to tell me, if I'm your teacher, what part of the feeding, mating, seasonal cycle, the prey, that is your object, is in at that moment in time. So if we transfer the metaphor literally to the issues of hunting, as has been traditional in the culture, then if you're a good hunter, I can send you after any animal at any time of day or night, and you will know where they are and what they're doing and how to make the approach. And what enticements, stalking, what tracking is required to succeed as a hunter. If the way you approach your prey becomes predictable, you've just lost your status. Not only as a hunter, because you'll fail, but number two, you yourself become vulnerable to be hunted. And it doesn't matter how good you are at what you do if you're predictable. These are themes I wish to develop over the run we have together here. But the biggest challenge is the one I started with. I want you to take this material at some point in your future and go, enough of that, I know how to do this, I do it elegantly, I do it with effectiveness, and I'm even efficient at it. I can get it done pretty quick. And you've savored it, and you've enjoyed your triumphs, and you recognize you're starting to repeat yourself. And at that point, then remember the invitation. And remember the technology that you've been armed with, prepared with, so that you can make your prey even excellent. And it's a hunt that enhances both the hunter and the huntee, and one which meets my objectives, which is why I'm talking to you this morning. Not for your objectives, but for mine. We'll get to your objectives in a moment. I want you to understand mine. There's a dovetailing of our objectives in the sense that that's what I want, and the easiest way that I know of for us to get to the point where you'll meet my objectives is for me to serve yours for a few days. There are holes in your education, in your background as far as what's happened here. Of necessity, there's a limited amount of time, energy, resources. I need to know about those. That's your part of the contract. My part of the contract is to deliver both what you want and, even more importantly, what I perceive you to need in terms of rounding out your education. A great deal of what we'll be doing here involves integration of skills that you've already been presented with, but maybe have not attached in some core way to your own behaviors. It may involve finding, for some of you, that you've already mastered it and integrated this class of skills, let's say anchoring skills, to the point where I have to take those choices away from you. It's a principle called stretch. Have we talked about this principle here? So you understand what I'm referring to. If you can, you may not. If you can't, you have to. And if goes a long way to keeping yourself alive as you go through life. Let's take language learning. There's a man who lives in Vancouver, British Columbia, who Guinness Book of Records has just verified is the world's most advanced polyglot that they've been able to find so far. He speaks 42 languages fluently. Exactly. Oh, God. 42 languages. More remarkable than that is the fact that he can go, let me give you an operational definition. Let's call first fluency a behaviorally defined competency whereby someone can speak with enough fluency in language X, not their native language, that native speakers of language X, in the contextual context of the culture, are comfortable talking with them. Let's call that first fluency. Roughly, you understand. Some of you have achieved it, some of you have dreamed about it. Some of you have done both. And this man can go from having no contact, written or auditory, with a language to first fluency in 7 hours. Yeah, I agree, Joe. I thought I was really good, and I claimed 72 for me. 7 hours. This guy, I'm not even in this guy's league. He's operating in another world. Which, of course, is an immediate signal to me I'm real interested. So you want to go to Germany next week? Well, take a couple of days off and learn the language. You'll enjoy your trip a lot more. By the way, notice that none of it, your associations, and this is the point of me talking about this, your associations with language learning are horrible. Why is it seen that all words in Spanish, German, and French mean the same thing? You know, they all mean the same thing. Because they all refer to the same experience. The experience is pressure on your ears and a corrugated cubicle like this. I mean, the only way, only way, there's some genius involved here, it's sort of a funny kind of genius. The only way you could be exposed to as much foreign language as you are in high schools and colleges here in our country and not learn it is the way it's taught. Somebody did a great design. Wrong outcome as far as I was concerned, but great design. This language learning program, of course, would have no association with any experiences you already have in language learning because it would all be done unconsciously. You cannot do something. I mean, there are generations and generations within this century of linguists, very competent ones. Some of the people I used to work with professionally when I was a pure linguist, whatever the hell that is, who are brilliant and who have succeeded in failing miserably, individually as well as in teams, in describing the syntax of a single human language. No such descriptions exist. There aren't even anything close to it. But this man can do it behaviorally, not cognitively. He doesn't know what the hell he's doing. Far too complex a situation. He can do it in 7 hours. Yep. As they say, the surfers and Seneca just say, that guy is stoking, dude. He is moving. And the demon states that he occupies are awesome. Demon states. Has that been mentioned to you? No. A prerequisite for genius is the ability to focus and delete most of your experience. If you think back to your moments of absolute focus, moments of personal excellence, you walk out of a situation, you've just done something superb. I mean, not just good, not even real good, but superb. And somebody asks you, how the hell did you do that? How did you pull that? Your answer, there's only one answer can come back if you're honest. The answer is, haven't got a clue. Have no idea what it is. And if you try to think about it later, all you do is go into a confusion state. What's going on? Well, one of the things that is characteristic of that moment of genius is the ability to focus so completely on the task at hand that you delete everything else, including reflexive consciousness. Where are you going to spend your 7 plus or minus 2 chunks of attention? Well, I'll tell you one thing. You're going to spend part of it keeping track of what you're doing while you're trying to do it. It ain't going to work. Not like it could. If you could take and commit 100%. I've never modeled someone who I consider in the genius class who did not have that characteristic. It's almost a prerequisite. And notice what's going on is you're giving up conscious analysis. If you have to reduce your learning to that trickle, that linear trickle that goes through verbal language and consciousness, you're going to be a long time learning things. If you have the ability to switch gears, and I'm not saying that there's no place for conscious analysis. It's a powerful, powerful tool. It's over-contextualized in our culture. It's used where it shouldn't be used in a lot of places. But if you have the choice of throwing that switch and going to that focused state, where unconscious learning, behavioral competency is the objective, I bet you can do what Paulo looks. It's going to take some tuning up. It's going to teach you some skills. But I'll just bet you can do as well as you can do. I'm going to. I invite you to join me. I don't know how to do that yet. I'm going to find out. That's what NLP is about for me. You have to make your own decisions on how it fits in your life, the niches you've occupied, or start switching niches, however you want to think about it. Well, that's what I'm interested in. That's what I'm doing here in Boulder. I said NLP, for me personally, as one of the creators of it, has recoded itself in recent years to the syntax of states. What are the class of states that you can choose to occupy in which sequence in order to accomplish certain specified tasks? It's like change. You can only resist change if you recognize it consciously. Whether it's organizational change or personal change. It's going on all the time. The only ones you resist are the ones that are called to your attention. That's why I really have a strong value system that says that conscious mind activity in the class of organizational personal change is a dire mistake. It's like the language learning program. It's probably the only way it won't happen. It's like a therapist's office. It's the least likely place for change to occur. The classroom, the least likely place for learning to occur. The conference room, the least likely place for a good contract to occur. Those things are always done somewhere else and then formalized necessarily, if they're done well. If you really try to do them in those contexts, you have problems. So I would encourage you to use the self-hypnosis patterns, meditation, other avenues that you've explored, whether it's sketching with your non-dominant hand. There's lots of avenues into it. And the particular objective you have in using all states is to build your own flexibility. That is, you can switch states, and you can switch states with precision and with no residue. Notion of separator state, are you familiar with that terminology? That's like an anteroom between two states, right? A connecting corridor. You go through that separator state because you do not want to contaminate either one of the pure states that you have. There was a woman with me in Bali when we were playing gamelan together. Gamelan is it's lots of different kind of gamelan. Gamelan means orchestra in Balinese. And usually a full gamelan is 40 to 50 guys playing with such precision, it's unbelievable. But there are smaller versions of it. One is a gundere, which is a special kind of gamelan. It's like a xylophone affair. It has bamboo resonant chambers with metal keys, brass usually, hung across the top of them. So when you strike them with a hammer or mallet of some sort, it echoes. So you get different tones, both from the quality of the metal, the brass, as well as the characteristics of the echo chamber, the resonating cavity, the bamboo. Fine instrument. In Balinese music, as opposed to Western piano, on the gundere, your right hand is your rhythm hand, and your left hand plays melody, does the soloing. I had an accomplished pianist in my group who looked at that after all those years. it was important for her to have some way to keep those worlds separate. Just like learning a language, by the way. The problem with our language programs is that we're not taught to speak or understand language. We're taught to translate.
What?
Translate. The way you know the word Hund in German means dog is because you're given a word list. And you go, Hund, dog, Hund, dog. So there are no dogs, there's no dog shit, there's no barking, there's nothing around that has an immediate value to let you know there's a Hund. If you stepped in it once and it was called that, the experience would be powerful enough you'd never forget that word. In fact, you won't. You didn't even do it here. The problem is that if you're not given experience to attach words and phrases to, you can only translate back into your native matrix, right? Which is a 100% defeat of the point of learning a language to begin with. Languages are just different ways of carving the world of experience up. There are a series of perceptual filters which cause you to attend to certain parts of your environment and ignore others. Not because they're true. The epistemology of language is junk. Like any belief system that I've run across. But it is the accumulated wisdom of the people who've gone before you. You know the story, Eskimo has words for snow. Why do they have much words for snow? And you don't, actually around here you have quite a few words for snow too. But let's go to Phoenix, Arizona. Snow is snow. And the accumulated wisdom of the people, in some sense, is encapsulated in their vocabulary in the set of distinctions, because every word or phrase is a way of forming your expectations. That is, by naming things, we call them habitual perceptual awareness. So when you learn another language, strictly speaking, no two languages are translatable. You can't translate from another language into your own. You can certainly operate in one and in the other, but straight translation, not real. So, if all you're offered is a cubicle and a pair of earphones, you are driven to translate. That's the most effective way to not learn. What you need is a separate reality. What you need is a state which is so disassociated from English or whatever languages you speak, that when you hear that language, your native language,